Aldous Huxley was an English writer and philosopher. He wrote nearly 50 books. And here's his quote about history. That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons of history. Welcome to the History Slices podcast, a mother-son duo discussing awesome bits of history. We prove on every show that history is not boring, entertaining, yet stimulating. This is History Slices. And now, here's your hosts, Jacob and Rachel.
Hello, Jacob.
Hey, Mom.
How's it going?
It's going good. It's going great.
Good.
You remember what we're talking about today?
I do. I'm really looking forward to it, too. We're talking about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
From It's a Beautiful Day.
From Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, what an iconic person he is.
Oh, absolutely. I want to talk about this guy because I felt that he was very influential in a whole bunch of people. It was like a major part of some people's childhoods. Like his show lasted for decades.
Yeah, so many children were affected and influenced by Mr. Rogers.
Like a great person in general.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not talk about him?
Yeah.
Right? You know?
I love that. Shout out to great people who have positive influences. And yeah, that's awesome. Let's shine some light on goodness.
Sir, yeah. So just diving right in, talking about his life and then, building up to his iconic show, and we'll talk a bit about that. And then some kind of fun little personal side things while we're at it. So Fred McFeely Rogers.
Oh my goodness. His name is McFeely? Like there's Mr. McFeely was, he was a mailman. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yep. He put a lot of himself into that show. He was born in March 20th, 1928 in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which, fun fact, is also the origin place of the banana split.
Oh,
so that's just kind of a fun little...
What a nice, happy place that is.
Good things come from there, I guess.
I guess so. I wonder how far away that is from Hershey, Pennsylvania, where the Hershey bars are made.
I don't know.
Pennsylvania's got a lot going for it.
Apparently, yeah. His parents were named James. He was actually the president of the McFeely Brick Company, which was at the time, provided a big source of income to the town and all that.
Wow.
And his mom's name was Nancy. He also, when he was young, they adopted a younger sister for him named Elaine, who he was very close to.
Lady Elaine.
Oh.
Wasn't there a Lady Elaine in his in Land of Make Believe?
There might very well have been. Now that you mention it, sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It was a very religious household, and he was very religious himself. We'll get more into that.
Good, because that's such a loaded word. It's like, what does that mean? But if we're going to get into it later, I'll save it.
All right, good. Now, throughout his childhood, he had kind of a rough childhood. It wasn't tragic or anything, but it was just kind of rough. He was very introverted and shy as a kid. He had asthma. He was overweight. It's a lot of kids are, they kind of lose a lot of weight as they get older. But he ended up getting bullied a lot because of it. Because kids are jerks, as they're called.
Kids are horrible.
Fat Freddy or whatever.
Yeah, kids can be awful.
Yeah, real mean stuff. However,
there's nothing new under the sun, right? I mean, we act like bullying is such a, we focused on it so much. Maybe we don't act like it's a new thing, but there has been a lot of focus in the past decade or so on anti-bullying campaigns and whatnot.
Yeah, not to distract us too much, but I think it's because there's a lot more understanding of how damaging bullying can be.
That could be. Yeah, before they're just expected to buck up, I should say.
Now, outside of school and just kind of being the unpopular kid, he had a grandfather he was very close to. And this grandfather, he really impacted Fred. He told him that you make my day special because you're just being you or whatever. And that's a kind of statement that he took with him his whole life, and he ended up spreading on the show and stuff.
What an affirmative type of a statement to tell somebody.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a kid, he was also really into the piano. He loved playing the piano. He loved puppet shows, and he loved sweaters. His mom knitted him a bunch of sweaters, and he loved them.
Wow.
And all of those things would show up again in his show.
Yeah.
You see this as a repeating thing, so much of himself is in that, and become iconically associated with him too. So he went to Latrobe High School, which was where he started becoming more social and kind of came out of his cocoon, so to speak. He actually ended up as a president of the student council.
Wow.
Amongst some other things, like he was the editor-in-chief of the school yearbook, and he was a member of the National Honor Society. So he was a bit of a go-getter.
Yeah.
Once he kind of came into his own.
He got his feet under himself a little bit.
Yeah. After high school, he went to Dartmouth College for, I think as I say it, for a year studying language because it was interesting to him.
Yeah, so he only went a year to Dartmouth?
Yeah, well, he ended up transferring to Rollins College, which is in Florida, because he felt that music was more of his preferred field.
Okay, interesting.
And Rollins was a better choice. Or
that may or may not be pronounced Rollins, but I'm not.
It might be Rollins.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Names are weird.
Yeah.
He graduated in 1951 with a Bachelor of Music, which when researching this, I didn't know that was a thing, so that's cool.
Oh, yeah. That's neat.
But it was at Rollins, however you say that. This was when he met Sarah Joanne Bird, whom he would later marry.
Oh.
After college, he decided to enter into the field of television because, well, I have a quote by him that explains it better than I can.
Okay.
Basically, he said, "I went to television because I hated it so. And I thought there's some way of using this fabulous instrument to nurture those who would watch and listen."
Whoa.
Basically, he was very passionate about changing television, so that was educational and not random stupid cringe. My words, not his. Like he wasn't the biggest fan of just mindless entertainment. He wanted it to, because he knew a lot of kids watch television. He wanted to help nurture that, I guess.
That's amazing. Yeah, a really altruistic kind of a desire too, really.
Yeah.
It wasn't he didn't go into it for money or some other selfish purpose. He went into it to be a good influence. It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's also interesting to me because, I mean, I don't know the I don't know the guy, but I kind of know him, but I've spent a while looking at him, but I feel like a lot of people, when they have issue with something, they just be against it.
They would go the other direction.
Yeah.
And he went toward it.
Yeah. To try to change it and make it better.
Yeah.
What was her name? Like Mary Whitehouse, something like that. There was a British advocate person, I don't know what you call her, moral guardian, I guess, who was really wrote a lot of really strong word letters to the BBC saying this is too violent, or this isn't for, the youth. This is unsuitable, is basically anything she disapproved of. And she was on a campaign crusade to get rid of it. But this is interesting.
So you're just in comparison to somebody like Fred Rogers, who kind of jumped in the pool to try to make the pool better.
Yeah.
And she just
tried to close off the pool.
Yeah. That's interesting. Really interesting, different ways of dealing with. And what's the word I'm thinking of? Give me a second. Really wielding the power that we have as people. How do we want to do that? How do we want to affect the world around us? It's really cool.
Yeah. So he went to NBC in New York, the channel, and he got a job working there. There's a producer by the name of Charles Polacek. I think that's how you say his name. He hired him as an errand boy, which combined with a less than positive work environment was frustrating. So despite all that kind of, frustrations, I guess, he managed to rise up in the ranks to become a floor manager for opera theater, which was his favorite show. It's what it sounds like. It's basically like introducing some opera, and then they'll give some background, and then they'll play some opera or whatever. From my understanding, I never saw it. But in a nutshell, basically what his job was as floor manager, he had to make sure the cameras were ready to start recording, timing the shows, whatnot. There's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff, technical things, right? And he was very good at it because he was very observant and very kind of paid attention and stuff to what was going on around him. Then he became the floor manager for the Kate Smith Show and Your Hit Parade and several other shows I've never heard of. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Your Hit Parade sounds familiar to me, but I'm not sure if just Hit Parade sounds familiar or Your Hit Parade. So I'm not sure. And the first one again was?
Oh, the Kate Smith Show.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
It's just old 50s. So
yeah.
But he was moving up basically is the thing to take from this.
Yeah.
I want to briefly talk about the Gabby Hayes Show, which is one of the programs he worked on it. But in it, Gabby Hayes, I don't know if that's his real name. He broke the fourth wall and he spoke directly to the audience.
Huh.
which Rogers was, I guess, inspired by or really liked.
Yeah.
So because he took it as his show, as like just kind of speaking to the camera, like did someone there.
Yeah. Which is so much of his show.
So despite this success, you know, he wasn't making too much headway with convincing NBC to embrace education, because they were more about like entertaining and less about educating. So in 1953, he and Sarah, who they were married at this point, they moved to Pennsylvania and started working for WQED, which was a new channel at the time. It was actually America's first like community television station,
like public broadcasting.
Yeah,
like PBS.
Kinda, yeah. We'll get to PBS.
Oh, okay.
He became a program manager there. Because what it was is he saw opportunity to like kind of push his, I don't know if dream's the right word or goal, but to kind of push that with WQED more so than NBC.
Okay.
And he was right. The owners of WQED, they need a better name. They decided that they needed a kids show, a children's show. So Rogers and Josie Carey, who was the station secretary, they're given like reign to make a kids show. And that show was, drum roll, The Children's Corner.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not quite as famous. But no, we'll get to the neighborhood soon enough. So in The Children's Corner, Josie would introduce free educational films for children, kind of as like a framing device, I suppose. And Fred worked behind the scenes. He wasn't on screen. It was all Josie. But the night before the show was scheduled to air, Dorothy Daniel, who was the station director, she gave Rogers a good look charm in the form of a small tiger puppet, which he named Daniel.
Oh my god!
He loves puppets.
Yeah.
And I guess Dorothy knew that. I suppose, I don't know, considering it was like a gift.
Wow.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is that while the episode was airing live on television, Rogers had Daniel sew up unexpectedly without telling anyone and start talking to Josie like with no warning.
Wow.
Just like,
the very same day he got the gift and the, oh my gosh.
Yes. So unlike now where that might get you fired or whatever, audiences loved Daniel the Tiger, and they're like, okay, cool. There's puppets in it now.
Wow.
And he kind of became a mainstay of the show.
That's almost like an inspired move, you know?
Yeah.
Very cool.
10,000 IQ play right there. Outside of puppetry, he also played the organ for like the music. And remember, this is a live show. So this is where the white tennis shoes that he always wore comes from, because he'd have to run from one to the other really quick.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the show was a huge hit, and it got a lot of people's attention, including NBC, which is where he formerly worked at. And NBC invited them to fly to New York for a live show every Saturday morning.
Wow.
And on Monday, they'd be back in Pittsburgh to like with their regularly scheduled show. What that did was now Fred Rogers, like the whole country knew about the show now at this point, basically. You know, they knew
was the NBC show also called The Kids Corner or something to that
Children's
effect?
Corner. I believe so. I think it was just kind of like a side thing.
Okay.
There's a slight downside to this, and luckily it wasn't like too hostile, I don't think, but NBC wanted Fred and Josie to quit WQED and come over full time to NBC. But they're like, no, you know, like they were a little more loyal than that. So I guess sometimes a bigger paycheck isn't enough for that, go figure. But despite all this stuff that's going on right now, he went to and in 1962 graduated from the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary.
Wow.
With a Bachelor of Divinity, which was another thing I didn't know about. And a year later, he was ordained as a minister for the United Presbyterian Church.
Wow. Now, side question you may be getting to, so I apologize if I'm jumping ahead, but did they have children?
They did. I'm not sure when exactly.
I'm just trying to think of how busy his life must have been in addition to the
he was a very busy
professional
person.
stuff going on.
Yeah.
And educational stuff going on. Wow.
Yeah. So his role as a minister, it was because they knew that he was like in television, basically. So his role was to work with kids and their families through television and try to like, you know, kind of what he was thinking of wanting to do anyways. So what it was is the Presbyterian Church, they wanted to make a show with Fred hosting it, but something happened before that took place. He got a call from a man in charge of children's programs in Canada named Fred, ironically, also named Fred Ransbury, I believe is how you say his name. Ransbury, he wanted Rogers to make a 15-minute kids show in Canada. one that would air daily, which is a lot of hard work for something that airs
You
daily.
said 15, like 1-5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind that Rogers and the missus, they had 2 kids at this point. So it wasn't an easy decision to move to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
However, it was kind of what his dream had always been.
Yeah.
So he moved to Toronto. It took 12 months to create the show, which was called Mr. Rogers, and as one word, because I guess they thought it'd be easy, funner for kids, I guess. And the show, it had the neighborhood and colorful, in manner of speaking, it was black and white, but the colorful sets, loads of puppets. And for the first time, he was on screen, like hosting it. It wasn't just him in the background doing stuff.
Yeah.
The show itself was pretty short-lived, but it was a big hit in Canada. And yeah, it was like kind of a predecessor to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. After this show, after like the contract kind of expired, he moved back to the States because he wanted to be closer to his family, which is fair enough,
Makes sense.
Yeah. His next show would be his most famous one. So, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it first aired in 1966 and is very much like the Canadian show that we just talked about. At least for the first year, it kind of evolved as everything does and expanded, new puppets, new locations, whatever.
Yeah.
The Sears Company decided to sponsor it, and it went like national. The famous theme song, right, that everyone knows, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood," that it was written by Rogers himself.
That's cool.
And I think we have it. Do we have it?
We do, yeah. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
So that was just a little snippet of it. It just the piano keys, it just sounds like a smile.
It does. He, again, like I say, he wrote the song. He sang it. Obviously, that was him. And yeah, he put so much of himself in that. So
yeah,
he wore his iconic sweaters with the white sneakers and all that, and he had all the puppets and the piano music, and yeah,
it's really amazing how much that show is just him, and how much of it is it's nothing like the flashy, exciting kind of tone that every show has. It seems like nowadays it's very down to earth and plain.
When he was still living, he was kind of not a joke, but people kind of poked fun at that a little bit with the because they thought he was a little too wholesome, a little too like kind of relaxed, or
too wholesome. That's yeah.
Yeah, well, just from like a objective standpoint, I guess they're like, this is kind of silly,
a little too squeaky.
Yeah. Well, regardless, in 1969, the show went color,
Oh yeah.
and it's a cultural cornerstone, at least in the States. I don't think it went too international or anything like that, judging from like comments and stuff I've read. As just one person, I don't know anything about them, but there's one person I read somewhere was a comment on a video or whatever, where he was like, the more I hear about this guy, the more I'm thinking that like we missed out in like France or wherever that guy was from. I don't know, not America.
Yeah.
So, and it was, even at the time it was very popular. PBS, which is the public broadcasting service for all you non-American folk, it took charge in its 3rd season. The show actually had a couple different runs. There was like, I think, a hiatus. But the first run had 8 seasons, which was 455 episodes.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Did it end up being daily? It was, right? Like Monday through Friday or something? Or do you know?
I don't know. I think so. I'm not sure.
I guess if it had 455 episodes and in 8 seasons, that wouldn't be one every day.
No. It was enough though.
Yeah, maybe it was a couple days a week. I was just trying to remember. I was trying to rack my brain.
I didn't want to do the math.
Oh, don't worry. That's all right. I just was trying to picture as a kid if I remembered, but I didn't get to watch too much.
That's fair.
Mr. Rogers when I was little.
Well, it's crazy, the length of it. And even Rogers needed a break. So the show had a period of reruns, but he picked it up again in 1979. And this version of the show lasted until 1993 or so.
Wow.
He actually, Actually, I think there was kind of he came back briefly after 9/11 to kind of like assure kids that like, hey, it's okay or whatever, you know, to kind of address that. He addressed some crazy themes on
because
it,
he's
so.
such a trusted voice. And yeah,
I can't overstate this enough. The reason the show was so successful was because of Fred Rogers. He is one of the most empathetic, caring, charismatic, captivating person I've ever seen. He wasn't acting. If you haven't seen it or you haven't seen him, you don't understand what
it's Mr. Rogers on the screen. He's not a character. He's not playing some other.
I've seen so many interviews and read about how he acted on camera as the same person. Joan Waters, who was kind of this tough as nail kind of comedian lady back in the 80s or whenever, she interviewed him. And she was like, it's on YouTube. Like she was like reduced to like a little like schoolgirl or something. You know, she was just really like just captivated by this guy.
He almost has a magical kind of presence.
It's like, I don't know. I don't know what to say about him because it's like no one is that nice, right? It's like what
he kind of seems. I mean, it kind of seems like, and maybe this is just my take on it. Obviously, it's a subjective opinion.
Sure,
but he's kind of someone to aspire to, especially in the face of how harsh the world can be to everybody, you know, big, little, old, young, fat, ugly, you know, beautiful, rich, not rich. I mean, it gives us something to, you know, aspire to be that kind of person despite what we see around us.
Absolutely. You always place great value in being yourself and being honest and not just like don't tell lies, being honest, but like being upfront with your feelings. And there's no shame in, you know, being angry at something or sad at something, you know, like it was a very mature way to tell kids, like it was a very mature way to handle these things.
Yeah.
And on his show, he'd talk about relevant subjects that no one else would be willing to talk to kids about. Like he had an episode about death and divorce and stuff like that. Yeah. Though, of course, often it was also just, you know, more like kids, you know, like
kid level.
Yeah, like about, you know, like tying your shoes or whatever, you know.
But helping them process really difficult topics.
And there's a lot of crazy, wholesome stories about Rogers. I'm going to talk a couple about them. One of like a short one is that he would feed his fists and like in the show, right? But eventually he started narrating himself saying, I'm going to feed my fist now. What happened was a blind girl who listened to his show was worried that he wasn't feeding the fist.
Oh, that's fascinating. So he would visually, we'd see him on camera go feed his fish while he was saying hello or good morning or whatever. And then so he started saying, I'm going to go feed my fish.
Yeah, just so she wouldn't worry because her mom or whatever wrote a note or she had a note written to him. But my favorite story, I think my favorite one, and this is one you can watch on YouTube, so it's fact. It isn't just like people saying stuff, you know. It isn't like there's one story about how some guy stole his car, realized it was his, and then returned it with a note saying, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you. I don't know if that's true, but I can believe it happened, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But this one did happen. Once, I think this was like in the late 60s, like 69, something like that. Congress was debating cutting funds like up to $10 million of PBS, similar shows or channels like that, educational wise. Rogers testified in court, and in like less than 10 minutes, the budget cut turned into a 10 million budget increase.
Oh my god!
It was insane, and he just like basically told him about his show and saying them like a song about it or whatever.
Wow, he was just himself.
And like the I don't remember the guy's name. It was one of the, like the Democrat senators. I can't remember his name, but he's like, do we have a copy of that show? That's interesting. You know, he like he got like Jedi mind tricked or something. It was crazy.
Wow. I know he was still pretty brand new at the end of the 60s.
Yeah. It's like the reverse Hitler, right?
Yeah.
He's using his charismatic powers for good.
Yeah. Almost like a Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, like, that's crazy.
This is not the place you want to cut.
Yeah, it's insane how much like empathy is there.
Wow.
Another story, and this one was funny because he wasn't the biggest fan of like parodies of himself or anything. Like if it was done in good faith and he recognized that it was like us because we love you so much as an effects in a parody, and he was fine with it. But one time the KKK had a guy looked kind of like Mr. Rogers and had an impersonator to try to like indoctrinate children. And when the real Mr. Rogers found out about them, he sued them, and they lost, or the KKK lost like instantly in court.
Wow.
And he's
How offensive.
right. And he's like, I'm not the suing person, but that got my goat.
Yeah,
Like-
seriously. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything he does is pure.
Yeah.
And they come out and just try to smear him.
Mm-hmm. So the show is amazing. It's great. It's very nice. It's very wholesome. It's been streaming on Twitch since 2018 or whatever.
That's really cool. Do you remember watching that as a kid at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if you guys watched that or not, honestly. Did you have a favorite part?
Oh man, I don't know. The puppets are fun. I like the puppets.
Yeah.
There's little Keen Friday and all that.
Yeah. And in the land of make believe or whatever.
Yeah.
That
There'd
was
be like a train.
Yeah,
I think,
that was like
cat.
my favorite part when watching that train go around, and then all of a sudden they're in the land of make believe, and yeah. That's awesome.
There's one bit where like McFeely, the postman, he brought him like a slide whistle, and he just played like a slide whistle. And
yeah.
like, I don't know. It was fun.
And didn't he sometimes
wholesome.
he used to go? It seems like he would go to different places, almost like taking us on a field trip. Like it would be to go to a factory or something like that.
There was a like a segment of the show where they would leave kind of the house and go to, or leave the set. I should say.
Yeah.
And go to.
It felt like you were leaving the house.
Yeah, and go to some like little mini, like you said, a field trip or whatever.
Yeah.
Visit a farm or whatever.
That was really cool. Really well done.
Yeah, and there's one story. There's one thing where he had on a 10-year-old kid in a wheelchair. I'm not sure what his ailment was, but he was disabled, and he had an episode with this kid as kind of like a, like, I don't know how you'd say it, like, I don't know, just like
bringing awareness,
I guess, yeah, but also just like, you can do stuff I can't do, and I can do stuff you can't do, and that's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's good at something. Well, years later, like 20 some years later, or whenever, during an awards show, this kid, now an adult, he rode out his wheelchair to personally thank Mr. Rogers, and Rogers, like, they got a awesome close up of his face. He was so genuinely happy to see him. Like he jumped on the stage, which is like one of those scenes where it's just like, if it was anyone else, rushing the stage at your own award ceremony is probably not okay. But because it's Mr. Rogers, and you all know that it's like, oh, he's just so happy to see his friend. And it's just like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. People don't act like that. They don't think like that. So it's just like, generally speaking, so it's just like, it's such a strange, amazing thing to witness.
I think that the surprising strength of Mr. Rogers is, it's easy to get emotional over this guy, isn't it? Is he doesn't have any barriers. He is who he is, no matter where he is or who he's in front of or anything else. And the rest of us, typically humankind, we're pretty good at protecting ourselves and protecting our feelings and not being really open about what we think, or, trying to encourage other people. We're very self-centered and more worried about us than how we can make other people feel comfortable or try to make them feel better or do better. So I think he has this sort of quiet presence, but I feel like he has such a strength of vulnerability. Like his strength is in his vulnerability. And I think that's pretty ironic, but very attractive too. And I like pulling people into that. And that's why I say I think he's inspirational.
Yeah. There's no skeletons in his closet. It wasn't like abusive to his wife or anything. Yeah. He wasn't like an alcoholic or anything like that. Like, never that I'm aware of has there been someone that hasn't had some very major flaw,
Yeah.
And I don't know what his is, if he has one.
Yeah.
I'm sure he does.
I'm sure he must. Maybe he really liked to eat bonbons too much.
Something that's not that
gluttonous.
big of a problem. Yeah. Well, like I can't blame him on that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He was an amazing man.
Yeah.
And his show, he retired eventually. His show had finished up at 31 seasons, 865 episodes.
Wow.
It was at the time, the record setter for the longest running kids program. Sesame Street has since beat it, but it was like decades long.
That's amazing. I think, and always having him at the center, that's really cool.
Mhm.
Like Sesame Street, you know, people have changed and whatnot. But I think going back to when I thought it was daily, I think maybe it was out on like Saturdays or something. Not that it matters. My brain is still trying to figure it out.
No, it's fine.
But that's really incredible.
Another thing that I just remembered, I meant to bring this up earlier. Another thing was that like I can't remember his name. One of the actors on the show was African American. I don't remember his name, unfortunately. I know it, I just can't remember it. But there was a scene during like some real heightened racial tensions going on at the time, and the two of them had a foot bath together on the show, and Rogers kind of like helped clean his feet and stuff, and it was like a huge segregation thing, like black people, white people are not supposed to bathe together, and they're not supposed to like do that together. So it was like a big, to kids wouldn't get that necessarily, but adults certainly would have at the time, that it doesn't matter who you are or what you look like, you are special because of who you are.
Yeah. And so he was feeding that message into, and really just kind of confirming what kids already know.
Yeah. A newborn baby doesn't have any judgment about another baby if it's a different like ethnicity,
or if it has any physical issues or ailments or anything like that. We learn how to judge people. So wow, really interesting. Now, was he in the military?
No.
Okay, for some reason
there's a lot of
a rumor that he's like
there's a lot of internet jokes / speculations that he was actually an ex-military sniper and killed a bunch of people, and he was hardcore tattoos and stuff, which isn't true. A fun fact, actually, on 4chan, which is like the wretched hive of the internet, I guess you can say, they let a lot of stuff fly, but they will instantly ban you if you insult Mr. Rogers.
Wow, he's protected.
Yeah. Well, eventually, what I was getting to before I got sidetracked thinking about this guy, it's hard not to get emotional just reading about him, much less talking about him. But maybe I'm just a big old softy.
I know that.
A year after he retired, basically.
Which was in the early 90s?
Or early 2000s.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer.
Oh.
And he passed away February 27th, 2003.
Okay.
He was 74 years old. Still like nationally mourned.
Yeah.
Like so many well-known people showed up at the funeral, and it was like, it was like a whole thing. And the show kept doing reruns because PBS is super like supportive of him, which is nice. Sometimes they're usually very supportive of their, like Bob Ross, I think, is a painter guy. They're usually very supportive of their content creators, I guess you could call them.
Yeah, that's probably a good name.
Some platforms aren't as supportive.
Yeah, or loyal or whatever.
Yeah, or are just kind of generally a little more. What's a nice way of saying it? They mess around a little bit more, I guess. But the PBS keeps running reruns of his show and stuff, and it's all very wholesome. It's very influential. And I think this person, he made the world a better place. I honestly believe that. There's an old kind of, I don't know how old it is, but there's this thought that you should act in a way that if everyone acted like you, there'd be no problems.
Yeah.
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 And I think he got that now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's in such a small pool of people who are like him.
Well, yeah. People will be people. Yeah. But it's still very refreshing and very nice to see someone who, I don't know,
who was so genuine.
Yeah.
And who was so caring, like you said, and empathetic and just who he was. Gosh, very inspirational person.
Yeah. So that's why I want to talk about him, because I thought, one, it's very interesting and very near and dear to my heart. He's a personal hero of mine. Next to DB Cooper. No. Two, he, I don't know how well known he is outside the States. Like, I get the feeling that because like globalization or whatever, people know of him.
Yeah.
I don't know if they realize like this guy was a real OG. You know what I mean? Like, this guy is the real
I don't know
deal.
what OG means.
Oh, original gangster.
Oh. I'm like flipping through all the
No, he was like the real deal, basically.
Yeah, that's good. Wow. Well, I have enjoyed this episode immensely. I can't remember if I've sort of shed tears on any other episodes. I might have once or twice, but this one really,
I'm sorry.
It really restores hope in humanity, kind of, and just the word inspiration just keeps coming back to me. Like it makes you want to be a better person.
It does. There is a, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but there is a comment on one of the videos with him in it about this person. He was recalling a story about how he had a coworker who was just being kind of a jerk to people, just being kind of unlikable and kind of not great to work with. And this guy said, "You're not being the person Mr. Rogers knew you could be." And the jerk, he kind of paused a moment, looked at him, and they're like, "Damn, man, that's cold." and then after like a couple minutes, he went around apologizing to people and stuff. Like, "I'm sorry."
Wow, that's so
bad
funny.
Day. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that story's true, but I can believe it's true because it like matches everything else.
Yeah, that's very cool. Before you tell us what's coming up next, I just want to say a personal thank you to Fred Rogers. And also to you, Jacob, for doing a great job on this episode. And to our listeners, too, man. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah. So what do we have to look forward to? We appreciate you. Yeah, completely. Yes. What are we looking forward to next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite presidents. We talked not briefly, we had an episode on it about Andrew Jackson in the past.
Yes, we did.
And he was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
This one is a bit less of a jerk, though he had a very strong character as well. We're going to be talking about Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay, Theodore Roosevelt. I'm looking forward to that. I always do. I look forward to seeing what you got coming up because most of these people are just names and sort of vague places in history for me. So listeners, once again, thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a great day and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Confucius once said, "Study the past if you would define the future." You've been listening to the History Slices podcast with Jacob and Rachel. We hope you've gotten some useful information from the show. We hope we made you think, and we hope you were entertained. We know we had fun. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on Facebook at History Slices and on Instagram at History Slices Podcast. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. And tell a friend about the show. That'll help us out too. One more quote before we go from Michael Crichton. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it's part of a tree. Till next time, this is History Slices, signing off.